The elevator door slid shut with a soft thud, enclosing me in the small space. The quiet hum of the machinery vibrated beneath my feet as I exhaled, adjusting the strap of my purse. I pressed the button for my floor, watching the numbers flicker overhead. It should have been a simple ride, just a few floors up, then I'd be home. But then I noticed him. He stood in the opposite corner, broad-shouldered, effortlessly composed. The kind of presence that fills a room without trying. The kind that makes the air feel just a little heavier. The lighting overhead cast sharp shadows along his jawline, highlighting the quiet intensity in his expression. I glanced at him briefly, just a flick of my gaze before I turned back to the panel. "You didn't pick a floor." A smirk touched his lips, subtle but unmistakable. "Didn't have to." Something in my stomach tightened. "That's convenient." Some things are. The air between us shifted, thickening with something unspoken. I turned my attention back to the glowing numbers above. The hum of the elevator filled the silence, a steady backdrop to the quiet tension settling in. My fingers drummed lightly against my purse strap, an unconscious effort to steady myself against the weight of his presence. And then, the elevator jerked. A sudden stop, a shudder in the metal. The lights flickered, then steadied again, casting everything in a dim, yellow glow. I inhaled sharply, one hand flying to the rail. "What was that?" He remained still, unaffected. "Looks like we stopped." I pressed the button again. Nothing. Frowning, I pressed it harder. "You've got to be kidding me." He let out a quiet chuckle. "Not a fan of small spaces?" I turned toward him, brows pinching. "Who is?" "That depends on the company." The words sent a slow ripple through me, unexpected but undeniable. I swallowed, suddenly more aware of the stillness around us, the hum of the stalled elevator, the absence of movement, the narrowing of space between us. I exhaled slowly. "Well, I'd rather not spend all night in here." He leaned back slightly, one hand tucked in his pocket. "Could be worse." I narrowed my eyes. "You really don't seem concerned." He shrugged. "Getting worked up won't change anything. Might as well make the best of it." I sighed, pressing the emergency button. A crackle of static, then an automated voice assured us help was on the way. I leaned against the railing, my pulse still settling. "So," he mused, his tone easy. "What's your plan?" I glanced at him. "For what?" His smirk deepened just slightly. "Passing the time." A slow warmth curled low in my stomach, unexpected but insistent. I should have rolled my eyes, should have laughed it off. But instead, I just held his gaze, the air between us shifting once more, something unspoken simmering beneath the surface. Because suddenly, being stuck didn't feel like the worst thing in the world. The silence stretched between us, heavier now, like the weight of something unsaid pressing against my skin. I could feel my heartbeat, slow but insistent, thrumming beneath my ribs. The air in the elevator seemed warmer, though I knew it was just my own awareness heightening every sensation. He shifted, barely a movement, but I noticed it. The way his fingers flexed against his side before slipping into his pocket, the slow exhale he let out as he leaned against the wall, watching me. Not impatiently. Not idly. Just watching. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to keep my voice even. "You're way too relaxed about this. And you're way too tense." His voice dipped lower, softer. "We're not in any danger." "That's not the point." "Then what is?" I hesitated. He was too calm, too composed, like he'd been in situations like this before. Maybe he had. Maybe this was nothing more than an inconvenience to him, another delay in his night. But for me, it felt like something more. The walls of the elevator felt closer, the air thicker. I shifted again, exhaling slowly through my nose. "You really think we'll be out soon?" He smirked. "That depends. Do you want us to be?" The question caught me off guard. "Why wouldn't I?" His gaze flickered, his head tilting slightly. "Some moments are worth staying in a little longer." A shiver ran through me, though I wasn't cold. There was something in the way he said it, something deliberate, something almost teasing, but not quite. I felt it settle low in my stomach, slow and steady. I swallowed. "You say that like you enjoy this." His smirk didn't fade. Like I said, depends on the company. I should have left. I should have rolled my eyes, broken whatever was happening in this moment. But instead, I found myself holding his gaze, the air between us humming with something neither of us was addressing, but both of us felt. The elevator wasn't moving. Neither were we. And suddenly, I wasn't in such a hurry to be anywhere else. The air in the elevator was heavier now, thick with something I couldn't quite name. The silence between us stretched, unbroken but charged, the hum of the stalled machinery a distant background noise. I shifted slightly, pressing my back against the cool metal wall, arms still crossed over my chest. I should have been annoyed, restless, eager for the elevator to jolt back to life. But instead, I was aware of the way he stood, relaxed but watchful. Of the way my own pulse had slowed, deep and steady. Of the way neither of us seemed in a hurry anymore. His smirk hadn't fully faded, though his expression was softer now, more unreadable. You never answered my question. I blinked. What question? He tilted his head slightly. Do you want this ride to end? I inhaled, slow and careful, searching for the right response. The obvious answer should have been yes, but the way he asked it made the air shift again, made me second-guess myself. Because part of me wasn't sure anymore. I swallowed, keeping my voice even. I don't think it's really up to me. His lips twitched. Maybe not. But hypothetically? I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. What's the right answer here? There isn't one. His voice was lower now, smoother. But I think you already know what yours is. A quiet shiver ran through me, subtle but undeniable. He wasn't playing games, not exactly. He was just waiting, watching, letting the moment sit between us like something inevitable. I exhaled slowly, shifting my weight. And what about you? Do you want this ride to end? He hummed, thoughtful. I think some things are better left to chance. Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. A slow, lazy kind of tension, like we were teetering on the edge of something neither of us had quite decided to acknowledge. The elevator was still, the air warmer now, or maybe that was just me. I could hear my own breath, steady but deliberate, and the faint rustle of his shirt as he shifted slightly, leaning a fraction closer without really closing the distance. You're awfully calm, I murmured, breaking the silence. So are you. I swallowed. Maybe I'm just good at hiding it. His smirk deepened, just slightly. Or maybe you're just good at staying in the moment. The words sent a slow ripple through me, curling somewhere deep. The elevator walls felt closer now, the space between us almost non-existent, though neither of us had moved. I could feel the steady hum of energy in the air, something quiet but insistent, pressing between us. His fingers tapped against his side, a small, idle movement, like he was waiting for something. A shift, a decision, a signal. I didn't give him one. Instead, I let the silence linger. Let the weight of the moment settle in, slow and thick, stretching out the way time does when you're caught in something you don't want to end. And then, the elevator jolted. A soft whir, the quiet hum of movement returning as the numbers flickered overhead. The air shifted. The moment snapped. Neither of us moved right away. His gaze held mine for a beat longer, something unreadable flickering in the depths of it before he finally straightened, rolling his shoulders back slightly. Looks like our time's up. I inhaled, steadying myself. Looks like it. Another pause, a second too long, before the doors slid open with a quiet chime. The hallway stretched out before us, empty, familiar, the real world creeping back in like a distant echo. He stepped aside, a subtle invitation for me to go first. I hesitated, my pulse still settling, before finally stepping forward, out into the hallway, the cool air meeting my skin in a way that made me realize just how warm the elevator had been. I turned back slightly, glancing at him one last time as he lingered just inside the doors. His smirk was softer now, more knowing. Guess we'll never know how long we could have been stuck. Something in my chest tightened. Guess not. The doors began to close. His gaze held mine, steady, unhurried, like he was still waiting for something. And just before the doors shut completely, he said, "Maybe next time we won't be in such a rush to leave." The last thing I saw was the glint of amusement in his eyes before he disappeared from view, leaving behind the faintest hum of something unfinished, something unresolved, something I wasn't sure I wanted to end.